Hi everyone, Maria here, and welcome to Season 1 of GGUTTALKS, GGUTT, a podcast focusing on business and tech for good, experience design, and gut feelings.
Special problems that you have to solve, but those concepts are pretty important. One other thing that is really important, as I was mentioning, is the proper mindset. For example, in every scientific or engineering-related university, you start thinking as a scientist. So you apply the scientific method, you apply the experimental approach to things. So you see a phenomenon, you formulate a hypothesis, then you do experiments to disprove that hypothesis, and then you gather evidence and you draw conclusions. If your conclusions are disproven by some other experiment, then you have to change your beliefs based on that new evidence. This is something that I feel is really important. And in fact, no professional schools that I know about teach the experimental approach when teaching JavaScript. But I do. I care to teach this kind of approach too. I care to teach this mindset, because it's not just about the programming language. It's the proper way of dealing with problems. And I think that those concepts can be also useful in life in general, because so many people are subject to what is called nowadays confirmation bias. People are convinced of something, and then they try to prove that their hypothesis is true by performing some experiments that prove the hypothesis. But that's not the right approach. You have to perform experiments that disprove the hypothesis, not that prove them. So it's a very subtle thing, but it's it's a bias that we have as human beings. And with the excuse of teaching a programming language will probably help people overcome it's a kind of a defect that our brain has. So we can overcome this defect by doing exercise and practicing on doing the right experiments to disprove the hypothesis. This is something that was almost mentioned in university and is never mentioned in professional schools. So I'm trying to do everything together in a very short time. In fact, there are some former students of mine that tell me that my courses are something like a whole university curriculum, all condensed in a few weeks or in a few months.
Well, that's an awesome compliment, actually. But I do agree with the practical aspect. And if you want being aligned with what's happening in the real world, I think it's not only in software engineering, it's in many areas, actually, where, you finish from university and then you go to real life and you're like discovering again from scratch. But then again, you might be lucky or meet some people along the way who might teach you some things, but you could eventually relate maybe to a concept or a word that maybe a teacher told you or you read in a book somewhere that would trigger something and help you, move forward and build your own thing or work on a specific project. I totally get you on that. And it's always rewarding, as you're saying, having some of your students telling you what's working, because this helps you build a better course as well. And you're doing it live because you want this interaction and you're trying.
Yes. I want interaction, and I want to do a kind of course that requires this level of interaction. I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but another important feature of this kind of courses that I do is that they are mostly like a simulation of what happens in the real world. So I'm not a teacher behind a desk that knows everything at all and just explains you, and I do a memory dump from my brain to yours. Yeah. This is not the kind of course that I do. I do some sort of training on the job. So I say from the first moment, and I prove from the first moment that I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I'm able to Google stuff on the internet, which is something that everyone nowadays is able to do.